Hey guys, welcome to day 3 of my 5-day SEO download. Today we're talking working with a digital agency. So if you are in a digital agency, this should kind of help you give some insight into sort of what the expectations are. I've worked inside of a digital agency for a number of years, and also as on the client side, working with other digital agencies. So I got a lot of really great experience. Some things that if you are an SEO, what you should avoid and kind of what you can think of. And if you're on your own, maybe as an independent consultant, just kind of sort of what things to kind of look for, avoid some of the red flags that I'm going to kind of talk about as well. If you are a business owner, and you could still get a lot of stuff out of this as well. If you're a digital marketing executive or somebody that oversees an SEO agency for the work for your business, this should really also help you as well. So let's get right into it. And that is here. Okay, so today we're talking working with your digital agency. So number one question always is, how do you find the right SEO vendor partner? Whether it's an agency, a consultant, hiring somebody in-house is going to be a little bit different, but you still want to make sure you're getting the right experience from that person. There's certain questions and things you should ask or think about. Now, if you're either you're in-house, maybe as an SEO, or if you're somebody who's looking for to work with an agency or a consultancy, I'm going to start talking to you a little bit differently in terms of how to find what I consider the right SEO partner. It should be the right fit and a really good relationship, just like you would with any other vendor partner that you work with. There should be really like this natural, nice fit that you should have with that group or that person specifically. Don't always go for the hard sell. If they hit you over the head with sign up with us and we're gonna help you move mountains kind of thing. So throughout the years, Google has really, and this is not anything not known. Google has made it a point to have a really good relationship with the SEO community. There are some in the SEO community who just sort of look at Google as like the bad guy. There are certain things from an SEO standpoint that are frustrating because they change things around or make little updates or don't really give us enough stuff that we've always been looking for in, let's say, Google Search Console. But there have been a lot of strides to kind of really pull the curtain back in terms of helping us to say, here's what you should look for. Hiring the right SEO. They have a whole area in one of their best practices section where they talk about it's important to find the right SEO to improve your website and improve the user experience within your website, because those things go hand in hand in terms of what a well-ranked website will have, and certainly those are things that you should absolutely have just anyway. So Google does support the business finding the right SEO. There's a whole section in Google's sort of best practices or user guidelines where it actually outlines that. Now, don't assume your SEO agency or consultancy or whoever you work with has a minimum 5 years plus worth of knowledge from an SEO standpoint. Most SEOs, it runs the gamut. You're going to find SEOs who've just started out in the last year or two, and they're trying to get their foot in the door, and they're trying to learn the best they can. And so again, I'm going to speak to business owner right now and say it's very difficult for an SEO to find really solid training and find great mentoring. And so therefore, when they're starting out on their own, they're going to have a difficult time really trying to navigate the waters, because they're essentially doing it on their own without a lot of guidance. So while there might be a ton of stuff out there like this is how you do SEO, there isn't any formal training until now, when I'll tell you about it a little bit later, about how to effectively train an SEO, whether they're in the agency or in-house, on the right protocol and the right things to follow. Now, when it comes to experience, you can't assume these big agencies, have really extensive experience staff. A lot of times they get really big because they hire a lot of entry level, and entry level is cheap labor. They're doing a big favor to the SEO and giving them some experience, but I've seen it in where it's been a big disservice. I worked with a Back in 2018, I worked with a client who was working with a fairly decent sized SEO digital agency. They had paid search and SEO and conversion rate optimization. So they were working with this agency on a number of different levels. Well, their SEO was not well managed. And the problem was they had this very junior person with less than 2 full years experience leading and acting as the face of the agency from an SEO standpoint. This person, while he tried hard, he didn't understand strategy. He couldn't speak to the chief marketing officer or the executive director to explain to them what the strategy was. And in that situation, it became more of a problem for the client, but also for him as well. It was a disservice to both himself and to the client, because this client was spending upwards of $30,000 a month on SEO for someone who's just junior. So I would say that's great. You can charge that if you'd like, but you better have somebody who's got a minimum of 10 years of experience, and specifically strategic experience on my SEO agency as my client account lead, who I'm working with on a day-to-day basis, because that's a lot of money for someone with very little experience. So unfortunately, this is what a lot of these big agencies will do to just try and get really big. And yes, they have overhead. They have maybe a physical building, and they have staff. But I run a consultancy, and I have people who work for me as well. But we're not a 300-person consultancy, and I provide primarily the strategic SEO for my clients, and I do that because I have the experience, and I enjoy it, but I have the experience to give to my clients. That's what you should be getting from your agencies as well. So don't assume just because you're working with somebody that they have all of this experience and they know exactly what they're doing. Next, as I sort of kind of segued into here, is expertise really is key. And you really should be interviewing whoever that person is that you're going to be working with on a day-to-day basis, whether they call it the client account lead or the account manager or the SEO specialist or whoever it is. You should be asking them specific types of questions. I got a whole list of questions that you should be asking of your SEO agency or the new person who does SEO. Just comment below and let me know if you want a list of those questions. I won't send you to get your email or anything. I will just give you a link to those questions, but just comment below and let me know that you want those questions. I'm happy to share them with you. But there are specific types of questions that you should be asking them on a regular basis when it comes to thinking through and considering one agency as compared to another agency, or you're considering different consultancies or even in-house. You can even use these questions to interview somebody to bring them in-house. And if you're an SEO, again, you probably have your own list of questions, which is great, and maybe you can just use these as a supplement, but always think through what they should know. Now I'm going to kind of jump into some of the stuff. This is sort of like what you could kind of ask them about what from your SEO vendor. They should be getting you and providing you with specific KPIs, and that reporting should be provided to you on a monthly basis, and it should align with your KPIs and get you an ROI. So what is the return on investment? That's what you're investing some budget every single month or every single year with your SEO vendor. It really should be aligned to whatever the return on investment is, and whether that's in the form of increase in traffic and sales to a particular product or services page, it doesn't matter, but it should be. And I don't sign off on any contract with any client until we agree on an ROI, and that's how I'm measured. So I think that's the way that every SEO agency or SEO should be measuring the same way. You'll probably hear some things like, well, I'm going to optimize 5 pages, or I'll get you ranked for these 20 keywords. That's not an ROI, and it's certainly not going to be helpful to your business. And if you are an SEO working with an agency and they give you this, you should then basically demand it from them that they provide you with some performance. And that's not just a once a year thing. This should be performance measured on a monthly basis. The next is, what kind of experience do they have in your industry specifically? If you're working with an auto manufacturer, or maybe it's an e-commerce site, perhaps. You might also have a very large international presence, or you might be, of local services business that is in need of some SEO. So I think the question should really be now SEO as a general rule is pretty much the same across the board. So if you're comparing, let's say B2B, so if you're comparing a software manufacturer with a video surveillance company, both are B2B. If you say to your SEO agency, hey, you don't have any experience working with SaaS companies or video surveillance, that's not really what I'm saying. What I'm saying is what is their experience? Do they have experience working with e-commerce, with a Shopify content management system, or ATG, or whatever it is system that you have? You might ask them about that kind of question is, what kind of content management systems have you had to optimize for? You might also ask, if it's specific to international, you might ask, what type of international experience have they ever had? And international can also, of course, include Canada and Mexico. So I'm not specifically referring to maybe some European sites, or maybe some Asia, like Asia Pacific sites. I'm talking just international in general. What is the experience? So that's really important to have. Now, there's some red flags. Now, the red flags are quite important, really. At the end of the day, what you really want to do is stay away from the agency that sells you on, links are everything, and that's the primary reason for why you hire SEO. That is 100% wrong. And having a solid SEO strategy is again, should be aligned to your business objectives and your goals. It should really be speaking to the business side of what your client is looking for, or what your client needs. And again, if you're a business and you're hiring the SEO, you want to make sure that they're not telling you that links is the only answer, and that's the only reason why you would do SEO. Okay, so that's wrong. Number 2, outsourcing content, keyword research to another country when your business is, let's say, North American based. So if you are outsourcing maybe reporting, I don't have any problem with that, because at the end of the day, reporting is reporting. And if an agency has a team in India, or in the Philippines or somewhere, and they're just doing reporting, as far as I'm concerned, I don't think there's any problem with that. They're taking the data and they're putting it into a dashboard, and then they're handing it to the North American based SEO. There's no problem with that. I think where it comes into a problem is, I think as far back as 2007, and I knew of an agency that thought it would be a brilliant idea to save a ton of money, and just at the time, this agency was working with a North American based business, and their customers were solely from the US, predominantly, not even Canada. And they thought, just have all that keyword research and title tags and all of that, just put that all hand it over to Bangalore in India and just have them do it. And the problem with that is, and if you are an SEO and you're in India, the problem is you really need, unless you're based in the U.S. Or any country that you're working for. The problem with that is you don't understand the language, the slang, the typical terms that are used for someone who's looking for a particular product or service in that specific region or area. It's much the same way with international. If I'm trying to optimize a site and it's a German site, I'm not going to use Google Translate to take a description of a product and just like throw that through Google Translate and then populate the product description. That's really not good, solid SEO. So what I would do in that situation is I would then reach out to a German SEO team or individual, and I would ask them to support me on building out the right kind of title tags, help me with the keyword research. Maybe if there's some customers that are in Austria, German in Austria is spoken differently than it is in the country of Germany. So again, you really need to understand the nuances and think about who it is that you're trying to get to support you on that, whatever that initiative is. So outsourcing as a general rule isn't bad. It's just outsourcing specifically the content, the keyword research. That stuff is, to me, a bigger problem. Number 3, cheap SEO is a way to sort of, basically it's $300 a month, anywhere up to $1,000 a month as far as I'm concerned. It is under promising and under delivering. They're not educating you, and they're frankly, it can actually hurt the business, and that in fact can take you years or months to get out of and recuperate from some problems. So you want to make sure that you spend have a budget set aside, a significant budget set aside for quality experience SEO teams or SEO person to take over that role. Number 5, promising top rankings. Please just run, because this seriously is the most idiotic thing that I have ever heard, but I still hear it. Last year, I was speaking to a business owner who was working with an agency who in somewhere in the U.S., I won't name where, but they promised this client that they used to work for Google and Google tells them everything. So because when Google makes a change, they're one of the first people to know. And so if Google's going to make a major change, they're going to easily get wind of that change and then make the right adjustments, and therefore promise 15 different types of keywords, that whatever keywords they were, probably completely irrelevant to conversion, that they were going to rank for them. So, this is a very typical, snake oil, sleazy way. And this is the problem, is what it's given SEOs, the good ones like us, a bad name, because they basically are going to tell a potential client anything just to get them to sign up. And so this is something you as an SEO should never promise. If you want to make a promise, what you promise is, I can promise you I will follow all of Google guidelines, best practices, and when all the recommendations are done and implemented on time, I can promise you a positive increase in traffic, a positive performance level. That's what you can promise them. You can't guarantee rankings, and you can't guarantee that you know what Google knows when they know it, which is completely moronic. So I think I've said my piece on that. But just, these are the red flags. They apparently are still perpetuated. I thought they were gone, 15 or 20 years ago, but they're not. Now, maybe if you're, again, I'm going to use the SEO as the example, and I'm going to use the company as an example. If you are a company and you're trying to evaluate what SEO agency you want to work with, ask for an SEO audit. Just say, hey, look, I'm not going to start a contract with you. Why don't we first start with an SEO audit? just pay whatever it is for the audit. And now you get a real good sense as to kind of the level of work, the quality of work that they are producing for you. And then you can really determine, is this the type of agency or consultancy that you really want to work with, based on the time it takes to get the audit done, the quality of the work. What is their strategy that comes along with it? Are those recommendations coming out of that audit prioritized and ready to get implemented? So there's certain organizational and procedural things that you would look for when you're getting that audit, not just did they check my page speed. So now if you're the SEO, and you're an independent consultant or you work in an agency, this is definitely a great thing to do, is because if they don't know you and if they're unsure and if they're not really keen on what is important from an SEO standpoint, this is a great way to kind of get your foot in the door and show them that you are a subject matter expert. So provide them with a real quality audit. And I don't mean go to one of these website grader things and print out some crap, because that's completely useless and everybody can see right through it anyway. And although it might be great if you're selling SEO for $300 a month, but just don't go that route. Just go use a quality tool like Ahrefs or Screaming Frog or Deep Crawl. Do a proper audit. Have it. Break out the whole audit. Put it into a workbook, whether it's a Google Sheets or something, and just show them this is exactly what I did. And maybe you could take it a step further, depending on your time, and do a competitive analysis. Take a couple other competitors and maybe do an analysis through using Ahrefs and show them, here's where you guys are and here's where your competitors are. Now you're kind of teeing it up for, here's what we can do for the next 6 months, 12 months, whatever. And they can easily see the opportunity and the opportunities that you see, that you took the time and the attention really to understand their business and their competition, and really show them strategically where they can really kind of win in the next 3 to 6 months. So that's what I have today. Tomorrow we're going to be talking about an SEO case study. So I'm going to do some SEO case studies, and I'm going to show especially SEOs kind of like what it is, what's really important, what I've learned from my case studies, and how it really helps to build up your skills. There's a lot of challenges that you might encounter, but you're going to also learn a lot too when you work with a client, and then you actually, on the other side, you get this really winning case study that you can share. If you're interested, and if you're an SEO, go to expertseomasterclass.com, sign up to the wait list. This is a course where I'll go into depth and detail on just about everything you could want to know, and become an expert at SEO, really qualified, and someone who will have an easier time selling your services as an SEO or working in an agency, if that's where you are working or want to work. And so I'm telling you now, go to expertseomasterclass.com, get on the wait list, and I will see you tomorrow.